Hi everybody, welcome to my channel Frugalisama. My name's Sam and this is where I talk about all things sewing. And today is day 71 of 100 days of sewing, and I've got a quick review of this new Great British Sewing Bee Techniques book for you. But first of all, I'd just like to say thank you so much to everyone who's subscribed so far. If you would like hints and tips about sewing, whether you've just started to sew or whether you've been sewing for a long time or you've just returned from a long gap, I've got lots of videos with hints and tips. I do try to focus on sewing on a budget. If that's the sort of thing you like, please consider subscribing, and if you hit the notification bell, that will tell you when I have new videos out. That's usually on a Friday. I've got a little series called Frugal Fridays where I look at free patterns, and midweek I usually bring you hints and tips, and on a Sunday I usually bring you plans, reviews and makes. And if you've been watching for quite a while, you'll remember that my first ever video was reviewing the Sustainable Style book, which was the one that the Sewing Bee brought out last year. And I've been reviewing the Sewing Bee series 7, and I thought it would just tie in nicely with that series. I've just celebrated my 1-year anniversary on YouTube, so if you see my last video, I'm actually giving this book away. So I thought I'd review it first before I give it away. That's not to say that I don't like it, it's just thought I'd give it as a little prize, along with a voucher from the shop that I work in, which is Fabricate. The voucher is just for UK residents, but the prize draw for this book is for everybody. You'll notice I've got little bookmarks in, very professional, so I can refer back to what I'm talking about. So I'll just give you a quick overview of what the book is. So the clues in the title, it is just techniques. There's no patterns in this at all. So you've got 5 chapters. The chapters are covering kit, fabric, there is a chapter on fit, and then there are longer chapters then on techniques. So chapter 4 is on preparation, and the last chapter, chapter 5, that's focusing on specific techniques. And then at the end you've just got a glossary. So I'll just briefly go through what's in it and my thoughts about it. So chapter 1 focuses on the equipment that you need. It does say one of the great things about dressmaking is that you don't need to spend a fortune on equipment. Your biggest financial investment is your sewing machine. But even a budget model will have all the features that you need. So obviously that's in line with what I've been trying to say, is that you don't need all the gear. It was heartwarming really to read that as the first line before you even get into the equipment. You don't need all the gear, you just need basic equipment. One of the first videos that I made in my 100 Days of Sewing series actually outlined what I thought you needed, and obviously that's reflected in here. Measuring equipment, your sewing machine, and just very, very basics such as your fabric and a good pair of scissors. So there is a chapter dedicated to different kinds of fabrics that you can use, and a little fabric directory as well, so you can just refer back to it and see what the properties are of different fabrics. And then I was quite glad that there was a little chapter on fit. It is only very brief. I mean, this is only sort of a small book. It does go into sizing and whether you should make a toile and how to alter and grade patterns as well. So going on to the 4th chapter, which goes into a little bit more depth, and that goes into sort of pattern matching and how to read your pattern, just preparation before you actually start sewing. Then the 5th chapter goes into more techniques. So the techniques that it covers, I'm going to have to read this. The techniques that it covers starts with threading your machine and how to practice tension on your machine, and then onto the different stitches and different hem finishes, different zip insertions, dart manipulation, and different sort of pockets, how to insert a sleeve. And then it finishes off with bias binding and lining. So let's just have a look and see what it says about bias binding, because I've just done a video about how to make continuous bias binding. So there's your illustrations there, and as you can see they're recommending just cutting it. It's not the continuous method, but obviously there are different ways of making bias binding. So there are some quite useful hints and tips in here just on the bias binding bit, telling you how to work out the width that you need. So if you're wanting a 1 centimetre finished bias binding, it tells you what size strip you need to cut, and then it just goes into application as well. So what you've got is each section has got a how-to, and that's got tips within it. So for example, contestants had to do a lot of buttons in last week's episode, so if we go to the buttons section, for example, you've got all your basic instructions there, and then you've got at the end a tip section there. Interesting little tips actually. You know, always have an odd number of buttons, as this works for better positioning, and to look at your ready to wear, buttons don't go all the way down to the bottom, little things like that, and which side of the garment to put them for wearing for male and female. I know these days it's not supposed to matter, but I defy you to try and put a blouse on that's been buttoned up the wrong way when you're trying to get dressed on a morning. You've got information about inserting an invisible zip there, and then if you go down to the tips here, the only part of an invisible zip that you should see is in the finished garment is a pull. So a great tip is if your zip doesn't match, to use nail varnish, which is something that you know, I've done in the past. So little tips like that. I think there's some nice little tips within it. So I think what it lacks really, and quite a lot of sewing books lack, is troubleshooting. There's a whole section on here on how to do buttonholes. But generally, your sewing machine manual will tell you how to do a buttonhole. When you're usually referring to books and YouTube, things like that, it's usually when you're struggling, and I think it would be more useful to have a troubleshooting section in there. But otherwise, I think it's a really good basic book for anybody who's just starting, is this. So if I was to compare it to the Sustainable Style book, there are quite a lot of similarities, and it does seem to me that they have pulled from old sewing bee books and just amalgamated all the information into this one. What triggered that was one of the illustrations in here. So that illustration there, I recognised that immediately from the Sustainable Style book, and I thought, definitely seen that before. And sure enough, it's the same illustration there. So they've sort of condensed all the information that's within this book and some of the others, and they've just transferred it over into one handy little book. So it depends really on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a book that's got patterns in, then this one is probably going to be better for you, although I've had a few problems with some of the patterns in this one. If you're just looking for a techniques book, then this is ideal. It's nice and small and compact, and if you've not already got a techniques book and you just want something that's nice and condensed, then this is great. It's got probably all the information that you need to get started. I wouldn't say that the information is particularly in depth. I would say for that, then this one is actually a better book, Complete Dressmaking Skills. But that would depend on whether you prefer your books to have illustrations or whether you prefer your books to have photographs. So this is just illustrations throughout. They're all line drawings. I'll show you there. It's all line drawings like that. Most of them are in colour, whereas this one is photographs. Some people prefer photographs and some people prefer line drawings. So for example, if you look at the section on darts here, and you can see they're all line drawings here, and with this Lorna Knight one, it's all photographs, and I think they are quite clear of those photographs. I think sometimes people have criticised photographic instructions because they're not always clear whether they're working on the right side or the wrong side. So interestingly, Sewing Bee Techniques book here, when it's looking at contour darts, is telling you to actually remove a wedge out of that contour dart, which is something I've never ever done, whereas the Lorna Knight one here is just telling you to put a little snip in it. And I thought that was interesting, and it just takes you into a chapter that I want to read out from the Sustainable Style book, which says they want you to play and try different methods and fail so that you can learn what you prefer, because there are so many different techniques, and that there isn't a correct technique. There are just many different techniques, and what you do is find one that suits you. Not to feel disheartened or discouraged that there isn't just a right way for every sewing process. Just feel encouraged that there are many ways to do the same thing, and just pick the one that you like. The book that gets recommended an awful lot is this Reader's Digest Complete Guide to Sewing, and this is very dated. It's 1970s, but really the information doesn't change. I managed to pick this up in a charity shop a couple of years ago for about £3 or £4. It has got a lot of information in here, including actual colour photographs of your fabrics, so you know what you're looking at. So hopefully you can see that. And I think that's useful. Colour photographs sometimes do have the places. This one actually goes into tailoring, and so it's much, you can see it's a much thicker book. It goes into much more depth. But I do think for somebody who's just starting or a gift, I think this one is perfect. It's compact. It's just got enough information in to get someone started, and it's got all the relevant information for starting. I think as an experienced sewer, and you've already got basic books such as this one, or the Reader's Digest, or even any of the old Sewing Bee books, you're probably not going to need this. I think for the price, it's fairly good value actually. It's a good basic book for beginners or improvers. I did notice that they were selling this one, which is normally £17.99 on Amazon, and this one, which is normally £12.35 on Amazon, together as a kit for £29.99. Now, when I went to school, 17 and 12 added up to £29 anyway, so I think you're saving about 34p if you buy them both, and I really wouldn't recommend buying both. You don't need both. So overall, I think it's a great little handy compact book. It's got just about everything that you need in it if you're at the beginning of your sewing journey and you're wanting to improve a little bit, but if you're wanting some more in-depth techniques, I would actually recommend this one. It's got more tailoring techniques and things like that in it. I think the strength of this one is it doesn't just say make a toile, it just shows you how to adjust a toile, and then it goes into more depth with tracing off a favourite garment, making a pattern, and then customising your clothes. For me, I don't mind whether there's photographs or drawings. I can read both. I think for a dressmaking skills book, that's sort of my level. As a gift for somebody who's just getting started, that's probably enough information. And price point, this one is £12. This was £14.99 when it was bought, which is about 5 or 6 years ago, so not too much difference in prices. And like I said, there's no patterns in the new Sewing Bee book either. So that's my quick review. I hope you've got some benefit from it and help you make a decision as to whether you need it or not. So that's it from me today. I hope you've enjoyed this little review, and don't forget to go to my last video. I've got a little giveaway there celebrating my 1 year on YouTube. Please consider subscribing and hit the notification bell for new videos, and I will speak to you later. Bye. If you like sewing, and particularly sewing on a budget, this is a channel for you. That were a bit slick, wasn't it? Oh dear.